a quick tour of the globe, tell you a few things about places I've been in the world, and hopefully it'll be interesting enough, or at least soft-spoken enough to be worthwhile. So, here we go. Now, we want to have, sorry about this. Now, I hope this isn't coming out back to front. That's how it looks to me now. Where are we? See, for me, looking at this mirror image, which is not helpful. Okay, Europe. That's better. So, I live there in the south of Great Britain, and I've lived there pretty much all of my life. But I've visited various places, including right next to it, what have we got here? Republic of Ireland there. Oops, there. We went to Cork. I went to a place on the far tip called Towhead, from where you can see Fastnet Rock. And it was very windswept and rural and brambly. It was good. And one of my favourite places is not marked here, but it's a little island in, I need a pen or something, don't I? That's all. Little island there, called Lundy, and not many people live in the island. It's a small island in the Bristol Channel, but there's lovely houses on it to stay in. Again, very windswept. And a brilliant pub called, begins with M. What's it called? Come back to me. It'll come back to me when it's too late. Hey ho. But it's the only pub there, so you know about it. He went there. So where else? France. All over really. Paris. Brittany in the south, and Cannes. I used to go there quite a lot for the film festival, which was madness. It's one of those. It's very French in the sense that it's both anarchic but very fond of hierarchy, and they have a system whereby if you are accredited for the film festival, which was what I was there to do, there's various colours that you can be of your card, and the top one is carte blanche, and that allows you a different queue to get into the screenings for the films, and then it goes down to yellow with a pink dot. Have I got that right? Was it pink with a yellow dot? And then without, it was pink with a yellow dot, and then it was pink without the yellow dot, and then it was, I think, then yellow, then blue, and these different gradations of badges meant you could have access at a different level. I was very lucky I had a white one, which meant that I got to go to the front of the queue for everything, which was fantastic. Terribly unfair on everyone else who didn't have it, but it made my job a lot easier. Spain, I've been to, and I really explored Spain in depth, though. I went to Seville, which is a beautiful place, the old town of it, and I was there at Easter. Was it Easter? In any case, there were processions of people wearing white outfits with pointy hats that covered their faces, which is the direct inspiration for what the Ku Klux Klan wore. And you might say, okay, look, fair enough. You know, the Spaniards got there first, that's not what the connotations are. But the connotations are really heavy, that look is totally owned by white supremacists in America, and therefore you might not want to wear it. But I think in Spain they don't care very much about that sort of thing. Still, okay. Mallorca I've been to, which I didn't like at all. Portugal, yeah, but these are sort of sunny summer holidays, which you don't get much in the sense of the culture of both. Italy I've been to a lot, all over, including Naples, which I like very much, even though it's a bit of a dump. It's very cheap. I was very fond of it because I used to go. Well, I went one summer with a friend, and we started in Naples and made our way up using a interrail pass, and we got as far north as Siena, I think, and we were wondering whether to carry on going north and run out of money and just to live on, bread, or to go back down south again. And where our money went a lot further, so we did. And a delicious pizza, best pizza in Italy is in Naples. That's where it was invented. Where else have I been? So, Corsica again, holiday thing, very interesting. Slovakia, I've been to for the World Sudoku Championships, which is a surreal event. Quite fun, nice guys doing it. And I think I was most struck by this town where all the shops closed at lunchtime. Noon, I think it was, on Saturday. Didn't open again until Monday, which is how it used to be in Britain, but not anymore. Anyway, that's a bit of a throwback. Germany I've been to a couple of times. One of them was, what was I doing there? Oh, Oktoberfest in Munich. So I went there with some friends and we just busked it. We just turned up, thinking that we'd be able to have a beer and have a nice time. But at Oktoberfest, they will not serve you beer unless you have a seat at a table. And they're all tables, there are all these big tents, and they're all full. And had this festival been in Britain, it would have been fine. There would have been a stall somewhere. You just bought a beer and stood around. But it's very formal. They just wouldn't let you do it. So we had to go across town to the English Garten on the other side of Munich. And it was great. They served beer there to anybody, and fantastically heavy pork-based meal, which is very much what Munich is about. And there was an bar band playing in a pagoda, which is unexpected, but welcome. And then I've also been through Berlin because I was going to Poland, and I drove over the border. And it's interesting because the moment you hit the border from Germany to Poland, the quality of the road surface goes down hugely. And it was very cold. It was minus 27 degrees in the winter. And I was taking part in a commemoration of a march that prisoners of war had to do. A forced march towards the end of the war. And it was very grim because they were very weak and it was really cold, and quite a lot of them died on the way just from exposure. And they didn't know anywhere proper to sleep. They had to sleep in fields or in a barn on one occasion, which is still standing. I went into the barn. And I was writing notes because I was talking to people at the time. And the biro that I was using, the ink froze in it because it was so cold. But I thought I had a pencil with me. I thought about this in advance. Yes, so that Poland. I also went. Did I go to Warsaw for the Scrabble Championships? I think I did. I didn't get to experience much of Warsaw. It was a bit wasted, really. There you go. Where else? Latvia. I've been to. To visit a friend, and well, I'm going to Finland. I've been to not Helsinki, but there's a place called Oulu, where they have the World Guitar Championships. So I went to see that. Sweden and Norway I have been to, but only when I was a child, and I don't remember very much about them. Denmark, again, I've been to twice, once as an adult, once as a child, and as a child I remember visiting some friends of my parents, and the most striking memory from that was the absolutely enormous ice creams that my sisters had. And I didn't. That's why it's so striking. I have not been to Turkey, although I'd like to. Austria, I've been skiing. Switzerland, I've been to. That's about it, I think. Hungary I've been to as well. In the days before it was an extreme right-wing leader. It's a funny place anyway. Do some open-air baths. It was freezing cold, but the water was hot. And I was hoping that I'd be able to play. I'd seen pictures of people playing chess in the baths. I was hoping I'd be able to do that, but you have to bring your own chessboard, which I had not. I just thought that was loads for I won't. So, before we go any further east, I have also been to Crete, Morocco, yeah. A few times to Marrakesh there, and Fez there. I love it actually there. I thought it was a really fascinating country. Lots of call to prayer all the time. Not all the time, but on Friday 5 times a day, I think. Where else in Africa? Egypt. I've been to go diving in the Red Sea, which again doesn't give you much of the culture, but it was great fun diving. And I've been to. Sorry about this. Where are we? South Africa, but also there. Is that it there? I think that's Swaziland. Yes. Which still has, of course, absolute monarchy. King Mswati III, I think, unless he's died recently. I think it was when I was there anyway. It's very interesting the difference between Swaziland and South Africa, because South Africa felt quite tense. Because it was. There's quite a lot of tension there in terms of between people of different skin colour and in terms of poverty and crime. Whereas in Swaziland, it doesn't feel rich, but it feels much more relaxed. And you might say that's a reflection of me, but I don't know how I picked up on it, but I really did. When I went to Durban, I arrived at night on a bus, which I'd intended not to do. I'd actually be conscious of it and try to get a bus that would get me there in broad daylight, but it was much, much slower than it should have been when I got there at night. Bus stations in any city or town are never the best place. And Durban was particularly true. And I was wandering through it on my way to the beachfront where I'd find a hotel. And a man drew up next to me in a car and said, "What are you doing? Get in." And I thought, all right. And I got in, and he was a white guy, and he said, "You can't walk around town like this, you're going to get mugged. Where do you want to go?" And so I said, "Well, I was just going to go to the beach and beachfront and find a hotel there." So he agreed to drive me there, but his job was to oversee security at supermarkets. And he said, "Do you mind? I've got to stop in on a few places along the way." And so he did. And I went in with him because he said it wasn't safe to stay in the car. And so we went in, and all the supermarkets had security guards who were armed with pump-action shotguns. And I mentioned this to him, and he said, "Yeah, you have to, because that's what the robbers bring. You've got to have as good stuff as them. If someone's going to rob you, you've got to have heavy-duty stuff." Anyway, he did eventually drop me off at the beachfront, and it was all fine. It was good. It's kind of him to have intervened on my behalf, because I think he's right. I think I probably would have been mugged. So, anyway, that's as far as I've been in Africa, because I haven't visited any other part of it, even though I would like to. So next we have, is it there? Where are we? Sorry about this creaking. India. Now, I stayed for a long time in Bangalore. Well, I say a long time, half a year, and travelled all over, up through to place where tourists go. So Rajasthan up here, and Agra. Rajasthan, where is Rajasthan? Is this bit? Yeah, and Agra, and around. And that's a fascinating place. This was in the 90s, and I don't know to what extent it will have changed. I mean, it must have done, but at the same time, I had this sense about India in terms of modernisation, that some things were very modern, and some things were very much stuck in the past, and no matter how much you tried to change them, they would stay the same. And it would be really interesting to see what's changed and what hasn't. But it was a big culture shock, because this is a country that superficially there's elements of Western culture to it, but it really isn't at all. I absolutely loved it. So I was a student at the time, or just about to be a student, and therefore not rich by Western standards, but by this standard, so that I could afford to do quite a lot of things. And it was fascinatingly immersed in this place where the sights and the smells and the sounds were so different. And just everywhere was this riot of colour in what people wore, and ate, and the dyes and things that you would see being sold in places. That was one of the most profoundly culturally fascinating experiences of my life. So, where else? I have not been to the Far East. I wish I had, apart from China. I went to Guangzhou to interview an artist about an exhibition he was doing, which was very strange, because it was a work of art that involved getting lots of people who weren't artists to make things for it. And some of these people really had, I think, had any idea about what concept art was, but they were making a piece of concept art. So when they went to see it, an installation in a multi-storey car park, they thought it was very funny at first, because they'd had their portraits taken, and these were all on display, and they thought it was very funny seeing pictures of themselves. And then, because they were from a village which hadn't really been touched by modernisation. And they had a brick factory in it and stuff, but it wasn't, not high tech or anything. So yes, they saw their own photographs, thought this was very funny and novel, and then they saw the work of art itself, and were just, the silence came over them. It was just, I think, didn't really know what to make of it. But that was a fascinating thing because it was organised by the British Council, and someone high up in the British Council had got someone high up in the Communist Party in China to agree to it. And from that point, in a command economy, no matter how weird something might seem to people, it's just the Communist Party says it's a good idea. The local Communist Party head says it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. And I visited a brick factory where they were making the individual elements of this, and they just making bricks, usually. They're called the Peace, Happiness and Brisk Business Brick Factory, was its name. And I asked the head of the factory, what he made of this. He said, well, when I first heard about it, I thought it was a very strange idea, but then I heard that the head of the local party thought it was a good idea, and so I thought it was a good idea. And that it's a nice, honest description of how the Chinese economy works. What is this horrible button there? Let's get rid of that. So let's just stop off briefly at South Korea, which is what I did for one night on my way to. I've been to Hong Kong as well, actually. It's a stopover, which I loved actually, which was fascinating for its hygiene levels. Which, given that this is pre-COVID, but SARS was a threat, or had been. And I suppose if you were living in a tropical climate like that, then chances of getting infection is much higher. So there were things like lift buttons, which you didn't press the button, someone had put a cellophane bit of material over the top, so you press that instead, and then someone would come around and clean it. They're fastidious about cleaning this stuff to stop infection spreading. And in South Korea, which I just went to Seoul for a night, which I mentioned in my other video, and I won't go into how drunk people get on a Friday night in Seoul, because I've done that before. But I thought it was extraordinary because it was so high tech, and everything seemed to work, and everything was so well designed. And I was in a hotel with a loo that would wash and dry your bottom. And everything was in the right place. You knew, I'd never been to this hotel room before, but I just knew where the light switches were and various other things, just because and so well, someone had thought about where everything should be. How intuitive it would be. So, sorry, I'm completely gargling that now. Can we get round to the furthest places I've been to? So I've been to New Zealand, visit some friends, and travel around in a camper van, which was beautiful and great fun and very relaxed and fascinating if you're from Britain, because it's much like what I imagine Britain was several decades ago. But I won't go into it now. The other place I've been to, which I really, really love, was Fiji. And not just the main island, which I did travel to, but also there's, might even be able to see it, I'm not sure. I don't know if that's it there. But there's a little island down here called Lakemba, which I visited, and it has an airstrip on it. And you can either visit for half an hour or visit for a week, because there's one flight in and out each week. So I stayed there for a week, and there's really not much to keep you occupied for a week, but it was fascinating for me because one of my ancestors was a missionary there he was there in the 1840s. And diaries show, describe all sorts of wonderful goings on, which I could probably do another whole video about, so I won't go into particularly, but I was able to visit all the sites, and there are 11 villages on this island, each of which has at least 2 churches. Each one has a Methodist church or Wesleyan church, and at least one other, and quite often it's Catholic church. But there's all different sects of Christianity have gone there, including Seventh-day Adventists and Baptists and others besides. And it strikes me this is a sort of place where missionaries think it's easy pickings. Let's just go and see if we can convert some people. So that's that. And we'll take ourselves round to South America. We've been to Argentina and stayed there for a few months, working on a farm for a bit, which was wonderful. And classically, riding on horseback and moving cattle from field to field and bringing them in so that you could dip them and so I can now marshal cows on horseback, which is a skill that hasn't come in very useful since, but it's, nice to mention. And while I was there, I also visited Iguazu Falls, which are on the corner with Brazil, and also Paraguay to Asuncion, because no one in my family had ever been there before. My dad was very well travelled, and he had been to pretty well, not all countries in the world, but all the ones that I'd been to already. And so Paraguay was the one place that I knew that was nearby that he hadn't been, so I just went just to say I'd been somewhere he hadn't. It was an odd place in that it had just come out of 30 years rule by a horrible dictator called Stroessner. It's also notable for German expats, and was a place where Nazi Germans from the Nazi period were known to have fled there, including some of the big war criminals. And I ate in a German restaurant there. I have no idea whether there was any connection to Nazi Germany there, but you never know. And there was a steam train that was going, and I assumed, first looking at it, that it would be some sort of terrorist thing, but it wasn't. It was just a functioning train. That was the train that was being used, a wood-fired steam engine, still in use. And it was a particularly strange place because I hadn't realised there was a time difference between Paraguay and Argentina, and so I spent the entire time on the wrong time zone. So nothing seemed to be open. I thought it would be, and I think it's possibly because I was going at the wrong time. Although it's also possible that everything was just been shut anyway. Because I don't know. I didn't really know what to make of it, and I wasn't there for very long. And that's hang on, we have North America, which is going to be not very interesting for most people. But what did I do? I went from Chicago there. I took I've been on several trips to America, and the 2 main ones were I took train journeys. The first one was Chicago here to Emeryville, California, which is basically there. And I pointed to San Francisco because San Francisco does not have a mainline railway station. Why not? Well, because the American railway system isn't particularly good. It would be unthinkable in Britain for a place as populous as San Francisco not to have a train station. but it doesn't. So you have to go to Emeryville and then take another form of transit across. And the train journey is interesting because of the type of people who go on it. So if you are rich, you will fly because it's much, much quicker. And if you are poor, you'll take the Greyhound bus because it's much, much cheaper. And so you get this sort of who goes on the train. And there's quite a lot of retirees or people relocating. There's some, on one of the journeys, because I also did another trip from New Orleans to New York. There were people relocating who had lost everything in Hurricane Katrina. And there are some other people who were just moving from one state to another. I mean, big distances, but obviously all part of the same country, and so you're free to do it. And it struck me the extent to which people would travel a long way and relocate in their life. And there were some Amish people on the train as well. Not sure where they were going on the train. I can't remember. I wrote it down at the time, but I don't know where those notes are. But I would wake up in the morning in a different place. So you'd go to sleep in Nebraska and you'd wake up in the morning looking out and, be in some beautiful canyon somewhere. And on the Amtrak train, that's different to how it is in Europe when you go to the dining car. Because in Europe, you go to a table and you'd sit on the table, and then another person or group of people come in, they go to a different table, and they would fill up, and then only really if it got to the point that it was so crowded there was nowhere else for people to sit, would they sit someone with you on the table. Not on Amtrak, they fill up the tables one by one, so you sit on it, and then another 3 people will come and they just sit you on that table, which is brilliant because generally Americans have a very good sense of narrative. That culturally, storytelling, I think, is much greater part of the culture. That sense of reserve, of embarrassment about being boring when you're talking isn't there. And so you just learn a lot about people. There was a train spotter from Chicago, and you think, well, train spotter's not very interesting, but he was fascinating. He just had a way of telling stories about things. And I met a family from Fightertown, USA. What's it really called? Miramar. It's the place where Top Gun is shot, and US Navy trains its pilots. And it was like he was trying to sell me. He said, essentially you should come and live there. And I said, well, it must be pretty noisy. He'd say, oh, no, not you'll notice. I think probably with military jets flying overhead, it's pretty noisy, but very nice guy. Yeah, all sorts. So that's a good way to travel, good way to get to meet people. I recommend that. Right, and I think that's it. That'll do, and I've covered most of the places I've been. Really interesting ones, anyway. So that's way too long, but then, I'm not really sure why anyone watches these anyway, and people have, so I can tell you about islands around Britain, couldn't I, about the Shetland Islands and stuff. There I've been, and Scotland, and Wales, but Northern Ireland, and how socially conservative it is. But I think 35 pence is probably enough, so thanks very much for watching, and